Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for the afternoon session of the workshop Gender Bias, Science and Practices. And so for those of you who are following on Zoom and who are joining us just now, and also for those of you who are joining us just this afternoon. So the morning session have been recorded and they will be also available online at the website where you registered. So this is one thing. So now we'll have a new session on gender biases in real life. And it will be about different situations of gender bias that can be encountered. So the first speaker of this afternoon is Dr. Rawan Charafeddine. So she obtained her PhD from the University of Lyon on the politics of the child, dominance and social cognition. And she is now a researcher at the University of Lorraine. And she will talk about her exciting research on gender and power in young children representations. Please welcome Charafeddine.
Hello everyone, thank you very much. Take this out. So the work that I'm going to present now is the preliminary work for an ANR-funded project that we're doing right now with Jean-Baptiste van der Ernst in the Centre de Recherche et Neurosciences de Lyon. And I am a postdoc on this project in Nancy. So, well, I don't think I have to define gender here, but I just want to draw your attention to the fact that the gender difference, that societies build on this biological difference between individuals, has a hierarchical meaning in it, in most, if not all, societies, human societies. So not only men and women do different things, but men do better things, superior things than what women do. And they have more control of the resources in the environment, and so men have control also over women indirectly via the resource or directly. So there has been during the last 4 decades or so a sustained effort in psychology to study gender development. That is how children come to understand the meaning of the gender distinction in their society, and what are the developmental processes that are involved in sustaining this gender system, meaning perpetuating gender differences, gender stereotypes, gender norms, and of course gender hierarchy. So here is a matrix that I took from a chapter by Rebel, Martin, and Berenbaum in 2006, with like the main study questions that were covered up to that point in experimental developmental psychology. So here gender is considered, how does that suit? Yeah. A multidimensional construct with content areas here, such as assigned sex, activities and interests, personal attributes, and so forth. And for each of these content areas, children develop concepts, beliefs, stereotypes. They develop a sense of themselves, and they develop attitudes, preferences towards these content areas, and behaviors. So, surprisingly, this literature has given little attention to hierarchical relations. So here, if you look at the social relationships line, there is no mention of hierarchy or power relations. The focus is more on mixity, friends, sex of peers, etc. So we propose to fill this gap in the literature and study how do children expect and when do children expect, if they expect, a gender hierarchy. And we also study not only the stereotypical representations, but also attitudes towards this gender hierarchy, and how do children construct themselves in this context. So, to be sure, literature on gender development does provide indirect evidence on how children's developing beliefs about gender carry a hierarchical dimension and serve to sustain gender hierarchy. For example, gender personality attributes are in large respect hierarchical. We talked about this morning. Stereotypes of masculinity include smart, competent, dominant, assertive, leader, etc. And stereotypes of femininity are shy, submissive, retreated, reserved, etc. So these stereotypes carry a hierarchical meaning in them. And when children come to identify themselves with these stereotypes, then they reproduce the hierarchy that is in them. But we are not so sure about when exactly do children come to know these personality stereotypes. We do have some clues. I'll mention one study that Christiane mentioned this morning by Bayan and colleagues, Bayan, Leslie, and Simpian in 2017. It's a science paper that showed that it's a science paper that showed that children before 6, so after 6, they think that men are really, really smart, and they think that women are nice. Before this age, before 6, children show an own gender bias, attributing both these positive characteristics to members of their gender groups. But at age 6, like the own gender bias leaves the way to more stereotypical representations. It is as if girls start to recognize that it is men who are really, really smart, and boys start to recognize it is the women who are nice. And very elegantly, these authors showed that these judgments are correlated with choice of activities. So starting age 6, girls tend to avoid activities that are presented as really, really hard, whether boys don't avoid these activities. So this is a really early development and a nice illustration of how stereotypes serve to reproduce the hierarchy between the genders at a really early age. So I would leave the discussion of other indirect evidence to try to be on time, but we can discuss them later. Along with this indirect evidence, there is direct evidence about children's representations of gender hierarchy. So there is this study by Liben and her colleagues in 2001, where they showed unfamiliar jobs, like clipster here, and either they showed these unfamiliar jobs done by women or by men. And so 2 years old children, for the same job, if they saw it performed by a man, they would rate it as higher status, more important than as the same activity done by a woman. But this effect is not present at preschoolers. So it starts at 12 years old. So there's an age effect here. Preschoolers do not seem to hold the stereotypical representation of a hierarchy of occupations. Very recently, there is Santana Gopalan and his colleagues, his, I don't know, in 2022, did an election task. So they asked children, well, there is this election of school board, and who do you think would be the president? And so there was an own gender bias in the 5-6 years old, meaning that girls expected the president to be a girl, and boys expected the president to be a boy. But again, this own gender bias disappeared at 7-8 years old in girls, but stayed only. So in 7 years old, girls were a chance, like it may be the boy or maybe the girl, but boys still expected a boy to be the president. So again here, there's an age effect, where we see a representation of hierarchy only at 7 years old. The problem is that these two studies and others that are similar to them do present a confound. So is it that preschoolers do not accept gender hierarchy, or is it that they don't understand things like occupational prestige and what does it mean to be president, etc.? So what we propose is that to study gender hierarchy in more observable situations, such as power relations. And so we reasoned that children may see gender hierarchy in power relations very earlier and may expect gender hierarchy in this context very earlier. For this to work, children, I must show you before that children do understand power relations. So there has been many studies lately on children's understanding of power relations, to which we contributed. I contributed also in my PhD thesis. And so these studies show that not only preschoolers, but even really young infants expect hierarchy or power based on several types of cues, like physical cues here, like size or physical posture, strength, and social cues such as history of interaction, number of allies, being imitating, setting norms. All of these things are seen as meaning someone is the boss or is in charge in the situation relatively to the other. There are also like supernatural cues here, where children expect an agent who's able to fly to be the boss of an agent who's not able to fly, like Superman, or maybe Superwoman, I don't know. So, by the way, all of these studies disregarded gender. This is another gap in the literature on representations of power. I won't be discussing that in details, but even us here, we did this mistake. So we presented, for example, only boy puppets for children to judge the dominance or the power. So other studies matched the gender to the gender of the participants, and other studies just presented, geometrical, non-gendered figures. So I think that future research is going to surpass this bias, because actually power is not perceived the same, whether it is a female power or male power. Adults do not perceive the same when they see a powerful individual. It's not the same if the individual is male or female. And so I think children too would present interactions like these. So let's start with what we did. So we showed children stimulus like this one, with one character here pointing in an expansive posture, looking at the other, and the other in a contracted posture, looking down. And we wanted to know whether children would expect one of these characters to be the male and the other the female or not. And we asked also whether this would depend on the children's own gender and whether this would depend on culture. So the method was to show this, and then there was this dialogue. Look, you see, here are two children. One of the children tells the other, you must do everything I say, do whatever I want. And the other child is saying, okay, I will do what you want. So you see, this is a really particular type of power here, really autocratic, where a person just takes the power and the other just bestows it upon him, her, without question. And so the first question was, okay, do you see who's saying, do what I want, and who's saying, okay, I'll do what you want? So this is a comprehension question, a comprehension of the posture, and I'm not going to show you the results, but a large majority of 4-year-old children and more correctly understood this relation, saying that this guy here is the dominant and this one here is the subordinate. 3-year-old children were also performant, but less than older children. So after that, we said, well, in fact, in this picture, there's a girl and a boy. Could you tell me who's the girl and who's the boy? We recruited 550 participants from 3 to 7 years old. First, we did this experiment in France, and then we went to Lebanon, that is a country where women's rights and women's representation in society is still way behind Western European countries. Lebanon is a country in which, when I did the this experiment, like teachers would come to me and say, so did they get the right answer? So there was a right answer here. And we went also to Norway, where conversely there are a lot of societal advances towards gender equality. So we wanted to know whether this has an effect or not. So these are the results in France. This is the proportion of children who said that the pointing is the boy, and this is the proportion of children who said that the pointing is the girl, the pointing figure is the girl. So we have all children, in 3 age groups, we have a significant proportion of children who thought that this is the boy. So we expected that in Lebanon that won't be much different. And it wasn't, except for the 3-year-old, where here we didn't have an effect. This was not significant in Lebanon. But from 4 to 6 years old, we had the same results. So a majority of children associate this to being a male, and this to being a female. So, and we expected in Norway that the results to be different, and we did not get that. We got like the exact replication than in Lebanon. So remember, this is a particular power situation that is really overt and autocratic, and there's this posture maybe playing a role. So maybe the fact that dominance posture makes one appear bigger, link it to other stereotypical masculine characteristics. There's a recent study that showed by Bailey and Marianne Lefrance that showed that showed adults photos of women and men in expansive like this or contracted postures, and adults had more trouble categorizing the gender of women, saying that a woman is a woman when the posture was expansive. So posture is really related to masculinity, and that is not actually a coincidence. If men are expansive like this, it is directly due to their power status in society. But also, I want to tell you that posture is not all there is to it, because, for example, for children who did not understand the posture right, so did the incorrect matching here, we did not have the effect. They did not associate this posture to maleness. And I did another study where I showed a lot of these types of postures to children, but in isolation. So either I showed this or this for several stimuli, and alone, not in interaction, children were at chance. It was 10-year-old children. So this, when we show this alone and say to children, well, is it a boy or a girl? Children would be at chance, or would say, we cannot know. So there's something about the interaction here. Okay, so the next study I'm presenting partly answers the question of, well, it is one particular type of power, and there is this posture parameter that was maybe playing a role. So this time we did the inference from gender to power. We presented 2 puppets, a boy puppet and a girl puppet, so gender first. And then we trained children to a game where puppets were playing behind or talking behind a screen. And then we asked children, okay, who said what? For example, in the training session, the puppets would say their names. My name is Leah, my name is Sam, or Sami in Lebanon. And then we asked, okay, who said, my name's Leah, my name's Sami? So children were trained to this exercise. 3-year-old children are really bad at it, so we could not include them in the study. So the study is with 4 and 5-year-old children. So the situations were 2. The power situations, we had a power situation on decision control like the other one, but with more initial opposition on the part of the subordinate. The puppets wanted to play hide and seek, and there is one puppet who said, okay, I like to play hide and seek. The others who said, me too, I like to play hide and seek. So issues conflict between them, and at the end, one of the puppets is heard saying, no, I make the rules, I decide how we want to play. And the other one says, okay, so I don't make the rules. And there's another situation in which both puppets compare their money, the money they have in their pockets, to buy ice cream. And one puppet says, I have 10 pennies, and the other puppet says, I have 3 pennies. And then we ask children, well, who said I have 10 pennies? Who said I have 3 pennies? As simple as that. And we did this in France and in Lebanon. We reasoned that at least the resource asymmetry situation would do a cultural difference, would provoke a cultural difference, especially that in Lebanon we went to a city in South Lebanon where women are really underemployed. And in France we were in Lyon, which is an urban environment and with middle-class children, so we reasoned, well, mothers would work more in this culture than in South Lebanon. So here are the results in France. What we have here is that in the boys group, we still have the effect of associating decision power to being a male and resource superiority to being a male. But among girls, this effect disappears. Here too, for both stories. In Lebanon, it's the exact same thing. So male participants think that the powerful and the richer is the boy, but female participants are at chance, let's say. So what we have here is that this type of inference from gender to power may be more malleable, more open to personal, decision. So here we have a significant subset of girls who decided to give the power, let's say, to the person, to the puppet of their gender, to the girl. But that's not all that it is, because we do not have a mirroring result here. We do not have that boys said the boy is the leader and girls said the girl is a leader. We have boys who said that the boy is the leader, yes, but female participants were at chance, meaning that there is this bias for same gender, because we know that children like their gender a lot, but there is also other thing, and this other thing we think is that the stereotypical expectation of male power. Yeah, there are two other studies who found the same type of result. Here, Mandalaiwal and Rhodes in 2020, the same year that we published our paper, found that had a task in which children were presented a boy and a girl cartoon, slot, I don't know, cardboard, and they had to place the boy and the girl on a ladder according to which one would have more cloth and toys, and would tell everyone what to play at recess, something like this. So wealth and power. So the person whose high status should be placed up, and the person of low status should be placed down. And so children, on average, placed boys higher on this ladder than girls. But actually this effect comes from the boys. Like 71% of the boys placed the boy in a superior position, but only 50%, let's say only, quoting only, 50% of the girls put boys in a superior position. So we have the same asymmetry here, with own gender bias for boys, for boy participants, but not for girl participants. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? No! Okay. I present the last experiment here. So in the last experiment we asked, okay, so in this context, how do children think about themselves? This time we presented this type of picture and we said, okay, who are you on this picture? And we know that children tend to self-enhance, especially in cultures such as France and US, where being assertive and powerful is a good thing, is seen as a positive thing. So a majority of children would think that they are in this position, not in this position. A result that is not found in Japan, for example. Japanese children, in Japan, this type of behavior is not valued, so children don't want to be in this position. So, but in our previous experiments, we did not specify the gender of the other. Here what we did is that we had two conditions, a same gender condition where if the participant was a girl, we told her, okay, there's you and a girl on this picture, who are you and who's the other girl? And in a different gender condition, we would tell her, there's you and a boy on this picture, who are you and who's the boy? In the same gender condition, the main result is that boys, like girls, self-enhance, significantly say that they are the powerful one. So there is no a differential value given to power according to the child's gender. But in the different gender condition, there is a significant difference between boys and girls, whereas girls were self-enhanced still, but not significantly, and significantly less than boys in a mixed gender interaction. So to summarize, we showed that expectation of gender hierarchy in power relations is really early, becomes really early since 4-year-olds. That it may tarnish girls' own gender bias, and it may also attenuate girls' self-enhancement in mixed gender relations. And I wanted to conclude to respond to this morning's interventions by saying that we should also pay attention to relations and how children, girls especially, self-stereotype when they enter relations. They do not enter relation in the same way if they're interacting with girls and with boys. And so this may be really a subtle mechanism that starts really early and that can shape a girl's identity formation. So thank you for listening.